Purim, my friends, we have been assaulted, attacked, assailed upon by Haman, by the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and so many others. But we've conquered them all because we believe in the power of love, which always triumphs over the love of power. So let us celebrate our victory tonight on this Purim with Can You Feel the Love Tonight? Tyrants have oppressed us, exiled us from our land, but with purpose fate has blessed us, and empowered we still stand. Jews will not surrender, the battle is not lost. We are truth's defender, regardless of the cost. And can you feel the love tonight? This is who we are. It gives us strength as spiritual wanderers, guided by a star. And can you feel the love tonight on this day of rest? Our mission is to serve humanity with purpose. We've been blessed.
Alright, we're going to do a little rocker for you. I got a Purim, you get to do all kinds of stuff. This is Shushan City Blues. Before I do Shushan City Blues, I want to give you, set the scene for the song. It all began in ancient Persia, 4th century BCE. Temple is destroyed, Babylonians are in charge. The Jews are subject to the Babylonian Empire at that time, and we, together, are in the town of Shushan. King Ahasuerus, how about that, baby?
Very good.
All right, thank you. She claimed she was the only one who could pronounce this. Ahasuerus. Try that 5 times, don't you?
That's a tough one.
Ahasuerus, the king, is unhappy with Vashti. Vashti, where are you, Vashti? We have Vashti here tonight. Over there.
Vashti's
Thank
here.
you. Right there, back Sharon. Vashti. Oh, Vashti. I'm sorry. We have several Vashtis, but it's okay. Because King Ahasuerus gets drunk, he's unhappy with Vashti, and things go bad from there. He goes south. She goes south. But she's invited to a party with the king, and apparently the king wants her to dance, and she doesn't want to dance. She wants to vote instead. Okay. Did not go well. She's gone. But as fate would have it, sets the scene for Queen Esther, and of course, are we ready? The rise of, everybody up top, let's go! Hang on! Come on, give it to me. Give it to me. Oh, I love it. Anything on the Purim spirit, right? Let's go. I need you on this one. Here we go. And I'm going to Shushan City. Shushan, here I come. Come on. I like it. I'm going to Shushan City. Shushan, here I come. Oh, they got some pretty my pretty virgin baby, and a bottle of royal virgin wine. Oh, tell me, baby. Well, there once was a plot. There was a lot. He hated us a lot. Haman hated us. I'm on our shoeshine city. On the shoeshine come. They got some pretty little virgin girls, and I'm gonna get me one. All right, let's hear it for Rocket Sparrow.
Once there was a wicked, wicked man, and Haman was his name. He lied and lied about the Jews, but they were not to blame.
Everybody!
Oh, today we'll marry, marry thee. Oh, today we'll marry, marry thee. Oh, today we'll marry, marry me. And not some Hamantash. And Esther was the lovely queen of King Ahasuerus. When Haman said he heard us all, oh my, how he did scare us. Oh, today we'll marry, marry thee. Oh, today we'll marry, marry thee. Oh, today we'll marry, marry thee. Come on and Tosh and Mordecai, her cousin Bolton, what a dreadful chutzpah. If guns were but invented now, this Haman I would choose her. Oh, today we'll marry, marry thee. Oh, today we'll marry, marry thee. The reason why we are here on Shabbat, and the reason why we celebrate Purim, is because human beings have lost, in many ways, our connection with the planet, our connection with each other, connection with our heritage, and our connection with the cosmos. And so the word religion comes from a root, the same root as the word ligament. The L-I-G means to connect. And religion is meant to connect us with one another, with all living things, and with this incredible creative power that some call God, that's in us all, that unites us all, and transcends us all. The power that has the ability to take what is and to change and transform it into what could be. And religion hopefully will help us use that power to channel it not only to what could be, but what should be. That's why we're here. These prayers that we say are just different ways of our tradition, like so many other traditions, of expressing profound sense of wonder, awe, gratitude, and a desire to reconnect. So in that vein, we have this blessing, this prayer called the Baruch Hu, which just gives praise for the wondrous acts of creation that's all around us and within us. So I'm going to ask you to please stand for the Baruch Hu. You can find this on page 28. Okay, my friends, I thought it would be appropriate, or the powers that be did, that on this Purim, when we celebrate the ability of the Jewish people to overcome their adversaries, that we have Sachi here, who is a proud member of the IDF and who served valiantly so that Israel could yet survive. Now, lest you think that all soldiers don't really know much about music and knowledge and education, far from it. The IDF, they are very, very well trained in many, many different fields, and Sachi knew that was Bach that Sahana was playing. I had no clue, but he knew, and so he's going to recite for us the blessing before the reading of the Megillah.
Shabbat Shalom. Let's talk quickly about the Megillah. First of all, Megillat Esther.
Yes, use the microphone, darling.
Megillat Esther. It's a Megillah. It's a scroll. When we open a scroll, we discover, we megalim something inside. Esther, also a very famous name, popular name like Chava, Rivka in Persia, in Paras. But also Esther, it's something to hide. In the sea to win battles. We know that in Israel and some other places, not a negative word. So Megillat Esther, something in this Megillah that we have to open and discover what was the whole plot and how we survive, and we can sit here today and talk about it 1500 years ago, 2000 something. So basically Esther, Megillat Esther, one of the books, one of the last books in the Bible. Another Megillah on a woman's name, who can tell me? Another Megillah? Ruth. The book of Ruth, right. Two women that entered with their names to have a book on themselves. There's another book called Kohelet, Ecclesiastic, but it's a namesake of Solomon, Shlomo, and some others, but it is like a female version of things. Very interesting, by the way, Ecclesiastic. And so basically, another thing about the Megillah, Megillat Esther is one of the only books, and the only books, that the name of God, Elohim, is not mentioned whatsoever. The word Israel, Jerusalem, anything else, not mentioned. Like some Persian kid wrote it that never heard about Israel, right? So, but again, Megillat Esther, what's hidden in it and why? Also, the first time throughout the whole Bible that the word Yehudi, Jewish, is mentioned. Say Mordechai a Yehudi. Mordechai, the Jewish man, sitting at the city gates. First time, Yehudi, like you said before, Yehuda, Hodu, La Adonai, it's like thank you. And Yehuda, Judah was the second son of...
It's also related to the word for India. Hodu.
Hodu, yeah.
Hodu is India.
And we say Turkey for Thanksgiving, we say Tarnagol Hodu.
Tarnagol Hodu,
A
right.
thankful chicken, poor fellow. Okay, so that's the book of Esther, very unique, very unique. Also for me as a linguist and for you too, the longest word in Hebrew is in this book. Ve'ha-ashdar panim. 11 letters, ashdar panim were those emissaries that ran in the Megillah to say that everything is okay, don't kill us. But ve and hey make it ve'ashdar panim.
You know, now that we have Tzachi here.
The ganze Megillah now, you got.
Tzachi is a true linguist and a scholar. The word Megillah, which means a scroll, is related to the word for round. And I believe the word for waves in Hebrew is galim, and galgal is something that's it's something that keeps coming back again. And the story of Purim keeps happening again and again and again, where people tried to harm the Jewish people. It's something that keeps reverting. The word in English for C and G are related. Cycle and circle are related to the word gal and galim, and Megillah is connected to all of that. So it's a scroll, but we refer to this one as the Megillah because it's the most famous scroll. But in the old days, all documents, they were all written on scrolls. Did you want to read any of this? Or?
No, it's all yours.
Okay, so I think you know the drill. When I say Esther, you say When I say Mordecai, you say yay. When I say Haman, we're now going to read just a little bit from the Megillah. What happened was that Queen Esther discovered the plot that Haman had in order to kill the Jews, but she didn't know if she could approach the king, because in those days they had some kind of weird rules, like if you approached him and he didn't ask for you to be there, if you just had the chutzpah to come up to him, you could be executed. So she was wondering if she should risk her life in order to try to protect her people. Nobody knew that she was Jewish, but she was contemplating whether she should do this. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that everyone, whether man or woman, who comes to the king into the inner court that is not called, there is but one law for him, to put him to death, except the one to whom the king should hold out the golden scepter. He will be allowed to live. But I have not been called to come in to the king these past 30 days. And they told Mordecai the words of Esther. Then Mordecai said to bring this answer back to Esther. Do you believe you will be able to escape in the king's house more than all the other Jews? For if you do keep silent at this time, help and deliverance will come to the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether or not just for a time like this, you have attained royal heights. Then Esther said to bring this answer back to Mordecai. Go assemble all the Jews who are now present in Shushan and fast for me. Neither eat nor drink 3 days, either night or day. Also I myself and my maidens will fast likewise. Then I will go into the king, even though it is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. And it came to pass on the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, opposite the king's house. The king was sitting upon his royal throne in the royal palace, opposite the entrance of the house. And the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court. She found favor in his eyes, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand, and she approached and touched the top of the scepter. Then the king said to her, Queen Esther, what is your request? Even if it be equal to half of the kingdom, it shall be yours. And Esther said, if it appeals to the king, let the king and Haman come this day to the banquet which I have prepared for him. Then the king said, quickly bring Haman here to fulfill the wish of Esther. So the king and Haman came to the banquet which Esther had prepared. And the king said to Esther at the banquet of wine, what is your petition? And it shall be granted. What is your request? Even if it be half the kingdom, it shall be granted. And then Esther said, my petition and my request are that if I have found favor in the eyes of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and to fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet which I will prepare for them. And tomorrow I will do as the king requests. And that day Haman went forth and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, who neither rose nor moved out of the way for him, then Haman was filled with anger against Mordecai. And now I just want to share a few words with you about the Torah reading. It's called Kitzitzaveh. The Torah reading this Friday night talks about the eternal light. The eternal light, which indicates to us that goodness and kindness and love, these are eternal values. And the life that is within us didn't start with our birth. It's a chain of life that goes back throughout antiquity. The eternal light can never be extinguished. We might also think of it as an internal light, because the internal light means that the source of life, the creative power that generated everything, is within us internally, and hopefully that light will never be extinguished. On Purim, we recognize that there have been people who have tried to turn off that light. They've tried to extinguish the message and the people of the Jews. Many people might be surprised to learn that the story that we read about in the Megillah, the effort to destroy the Jewish people, and the courage and valor of those who stood up to them and refused to succumb, that this story never actually happened as narrated in the Megillah, but every word of it is true. How could that be? Well, the story we know comes from Persian mythology. Mordecai and Esther sound a lot like Marduk and Ishtar. Those were the Persian gods of those days. They also sound a lot like Maundy Thursday and Easter Sunday. These Persian myths found their way into Judaism and Christianity, which indicates to us, my friends, that the religion of Judaism did not begin all of a sudden on one day, as our ancestors might have thought. They're part of ancient mythology, and they're connected to all the other great religious traditions of the world. And all of them, every one of them, is trying to connect us. This story takes place as people were waiting for the springtime, hoping that the winter would end, and that there would be a day when nature would return in full force and glory to the earth. And so they made sacrifices. But there's a Mardi Gras, which is also related to Mordecai. It means Fat Tuesday. Mardi is related to Mars and Mercury. It's related to the planets, just as Ishtar is related to the word star. The planets and the stars are actually in our bodies. Our bodies encompass the remnants of leftover stars. And so we are stars and children of the universe. And the story of Purim reminds us of our connection. Yes, indeed, the name of God never appears in the story, but God is all over the story. God is in the story every time that someone like Mordecai stands up to a dictator, an oppressor, and says, I will not bow down. Every time we have the courage to stand up against evil and protect others, even though we might not be threatened, God appears. And we reaffirm the fact that there is God within us. Every time that things look bleak and we don't give up and we don't lose heart and we don't say there's no chance and we are willing to take a chance, every time that happens, then we recognize the sacred and the holy within us and the fact that we can all literally be a star. Esther indeed means hidden. Ishtar. She was a hidden Jew. She hid her Judaism. She thought that if she announced her Judaism, she would never be selected to be the queen of Persia. But there came a time when she recognized that she had attained a certain position of power, and she could no longer hide her Jewishness. And my friends, I hope in this time, in this age, when we are facing calamities that our ancestors never even dreamed of, prolific guns all over our society, when we are faced with people who are trying to deny women's rights to choose, when we're faced with religions run amok, where the fire that we see, the eternal flame, instead of lighting the light of love and kindness, is instead lighting a flame of fury and of violent hatred, we know that we cannot be hidden any longer. We know that we must stand up and we must let the light of love shine within us. And so we can no longer hide the fact that we're Jews. And my friends, when our planet is under assault, when other species that were created just like we were are going extinct by the day, when the very lungs of our planet, the Amazon, is being destroyed, when our national leaders tell us that we should align ourselves with the president of Brazil, who is destroying the rainforest and slaughtering indigenous people, then we must be like Queen Esther and hide our Jewishness no longer. We can no longer bow down to authority. We may no longer allow people who think that if they take the life of someone on Fifth Avenue that we're going to blindly acquiesce. We will not. We will not bend the knee. We will not bow down. We must stand up against authority that is run amok. And finally, my friends, with this virus that we have, this virus that is so contagious and so scary is nothing compared to the virus of religious hatred and anti-Semitism, which has plagued this world for so long and which keeps coming back over and over and over again. The Jewish people are always the first one to be victimized by that virus. And then, as many other people have said, we're always the first victim. We're never, ever the last. There are some people who are victims and others who are carriers. They seem as if they're benign carriers. They show no symptoms, but they are carrying the disease nonetheless. And if we are silent to all the outrages that are going on around us, if we are silent to the hatred that we see around us, if we're silent when people are not being treated fairly and when our planet is being destroyed, then we, my friends, we are silent carriers. And the Jewish people were never meant to be carriers. We're the first responders. Let us give thanks that there are some people out there who are willing to take a chance and to try to cure this horrible virus. And let Jewish people work with all people of all religions and all faiths in order to stamp out the virus of religious hatred. And let us remember our true identity and never allow us to hide our true identity. Our identity is to be a people, a light to the nations who will come to bring about a better world, a world brimming with brotherhood, shimmering with shalom, and joyous with justice. Shabbat shalom.